Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the deal with that machine. Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. Yeah, yeah. You never got no medicine for it. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Jay. I'm here to do another video today about Ronda Rousey going on a podcast and saying that she is better than all of the other women performers in WWE, that she has more star power than anybody in the WWE. And I just think that's bullshit because, come on, this is a woman who was one of the worst wrestlers ever. You know what I mean? Like, she came into the WWE in 2018 with a lot of fanfare. First of all, before 2018, going all the way back to when she was on her generational run from 2013 to the time. First of all, she's in Strike Force. UFC purchases Strike Force. She comes into the She comes into the UFC in 2013. She goes on this generational run, and I give her credit for that because she did open doors for female athletes in mixed martial arts, right? And she brought the attention to women in mixed martial arts. She had that generational run. It was all over by the time 2015 hits. But during that time, during the generational run, you had Triple H, who wasn't in charge of WWE completely at that time, but he was still one of the higher ups. And you had Stephanie McMahon kissing her ass, going to her fights, um, tweeting about her fights on social media. So everybody was thinking one day she will hook up with the WWE because she was trained by Judo Jean LaBelle, a former wrestling promoter. She had the name Rowdy Ronda Rousey from Roddy Piper. Even after Roddy Piper died, he gave her the name, and she went on to use the name. She had a wrestling persona, a group of girls that she was with, and MMA was called the Four Horsewomen of MMA. So she was giving all the props to professional wrestling. So people thought it was only a matter of time before she makes the transition. So fast forward to WrestleMania 31 in Levi Stadium in San Francisco. She They throw Sting under the bus. Sting loses his one and only WrestleMania match to Triple H because they want to do the segment where The Rock invites Ronda into the ring, and Ronda and The Rock have a confrontation with Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. So they do that, thinking that when they go to Texas the following year, 10 years ago now, WrestleMania 32, they will have uh, a big main event with all of them, right? So that's what they think. That doesn't end up happening, right? Ronda backs out because she decides to continue doing MMA. She decides to go for a rematch after she lost embarrassingly to Holly Holm, right? Why? Because she didn't Preacher's daughter, Holly Holm. She didn't prepare for Holly Holm. She underestimated Holly Holm. She basically pulled a Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas in 1990 with Holly Holm. Even Lisa made a video at that time talking about how she talked about how kicks was her weakness on the show, and then Holly Holm utilized that and beat her. Right, so she gets shamed out of MMA. So she goes back and she trains. She backs out of her deal with the WWE in 2016. She goes back to train for mixed martial arts. She loses once again to the Lioness Amanda Nunes, and she's chased completely out of the sport. Then she goes on podcasts complaining about UFC fans, how UFC fans kiss Khabib Nurmagomedov's ass because Khabib Nurmagomedov never lost, right? Or they kiss so and so's ass, right? Whomever, right? And she talks about how UFC fighters don't honor, UFC fans don't honor fighters' legacies, which is bullshit because they do honor the legacies of a Chuck Liddell, of a Rampage Jackson, of a Rashad Evans, of a Ken Shamrock, of a Dan Severn, right? Of a Nate Diaz, of a Nick Diaz, right? Of even Mark Kerr, right? Mark Kerr, Mark Coleman, all these legends, Hoist Gracie, right? All these legends in the world of mixed martial arts, they do honor these people, right? Even the female legends, a lot of the female legends. Amanda Nunes when she retired. The reason why they didn't do it with Ronda because Ronda was a lot of political hype, right? Ronda was very hyped up by the MMA media, by Joe Rogan. At this time, Joe Rogan was beginning to get his podcast on board, and he was using his podcast at this time as a way to hype up MMA fans. So there was this talk in the fight world about her versus Floyd Mayweather, and people were saying that she could beat Floyd Mayweather in a fight, a woman beating Floyd Mayweather in a fight. You know what I mean? So that's what this was. A lot of hype. And when she lost, the balloon was out of her. But WWE was still interested in her. So Royal Rumble 2018, they bring her in. The first time they're ever having a woman's, a women's Royal Rumble, right? First time ever. Asuka wins it, right? Goes on to face Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34, right, in New Orleans. But Ronda comes out. She points to the sign. They're going to have the mixed tag match, but Kurt Angle's going to be her partner instead of The Rock, right? And I'm excited for this because I want to see what she'll be able to do in the wrestling ring. She does that. She does a great job in the wrestling ring. Stephanie McMahon and Triple H do all they can to put her over. In that match, she kind of stole the show, even from the main event, which was Roman Reigns and another former UFC, another former wrestler turned UFC fighter, Brock Lesnar. So, in the rest of the year in 2018, she has an amazing year, right? Everybody's putting her over. And then she has the feud with Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch is in the brawl with Nia Jax. Nia Jax breaks Becky Lynch's nose. They're supposed to have a match. They don't have it. Ronda is then booed out of the arena, right? And Ronda is basically disgraced. The fans are starting to turn on Ronda. Why? Because you can't really fool the people anymore, like before. Now, kayfabe is pretty much broken, and people view Ronda as an outsider. People saw that she didn't have any respect for the business, and it's two different sports. She's used to competing in the Olympics. She was in the Olympics in 2008. She was in in the Strike Force in the UFC and mixed martial arts. That's a different arena than professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is a work. Professional wrestling involves, people working together to achieve, the best possible match. So you had the likes of Nia Jax, the likes of Becky Lynch, the likes of Sasha Banks, Bayley, all these women working together to put her over. Nobody gets to be just like Ultimate Warrior said in his last interview on Monday Night Raw in 2014, right before, hours before he passed away. He said nobody becomes a legend on their own, and this is true. But Ronda Rousey displayed no humility whatsoever when it came to wrestling, right? And that angered a lot of the girls. And then, okay, they had the main event, MetLife Stadium, 2019, WrestleMania 35, East Rutherford, New Jersey. The three-way main event, her, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte. She doesn't want to lose clean, right? Because her mother's in attendance. Hello, did you not clue your mother in that wrestling is a work? You know what I mean? That even if you lost, it doesn't count towards your judo record because she's a second-generation judoka, right? Her mother was an expert in judo, and she became an expert in judo when she went to the Olympics. So she's a second generation judoka. So her mom's gonna be ashamed of her because she loses a fake wrestling match, but she doesn't want to do it cleanly, right? So she comes up with this workaround where she where Becky Lynch pins her, but she kind of has one shoulder up, so it looks like she didn't lose. But it's bullshit, right? It's one of the longest WrestleManias ever. I wanted to go, but I couldn't get tickets that late. You know what I mean? So I ended up watching it. I'm glad I didn't because it ran freaking super long. That was the last one night WrestleMania show they ever had because after that was COVID and they started to do it 2 nights. And speaking of that, okay, after that's over, Ronda Rousey, she starts to go on every podcast now and she's talking about how, oh, it was fun playing around with my friends, but I'm all with this fake wrestling shit, throwing wrestling fans under the bus and everything just because they didn't like her, right? They started to not like her. So we're starting to think, okay, this is a heel persona. She takes time off to have the baby with her and Travis Brown. She has the baby. And then, her phone starts drying up, right? And then, like, she's a mother now, and it's like her phone starts drying up. And nobody's calling. So roll around to 2022. She decides to come back. After all the shit she said about wrestling, she decides to come back. She wins the Women's Royal Rumble, and she goes against Charlotte at WrestleMania 22 WrestleMania 2022, WrestleMania 38 in Texas. But also that night, they're having, the WrestleMania split into night one. So it was supposed to be, she had it in her contract that she was going to main event night one with Charlotte Flair and her in a one-on-one match. And then night two, of course, was going to be Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the unification. Over time, they find out that Stone Cold Steve Austin is coming back to the wrestling ring after 19 years of being not in the wrestling ring anymore. So Bruce Pritchard, who has come back to the company during the time that Ronda Rousey was gone, Bruce Pritchard has come back, and he is now one of the producers once again in WWE. By the time 2020, David says she's an idiot. Yes, she is. She's now come back, and she's thinking they're going to roll the red carpet out for her. They don't. You know what I mean? Stone Cold Steve Austin main event against Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38. Of course, like he should, because he's Stone Cold fucking Steve Austin. Right? He's the biggest draw in WWE history, even bigger than Hulk Hogan. Right? So, of course, he should main event. Then, after that, she has a lackluster run, and then she puts over Shayna Baszler at that year's SummerSlam, and then she's gone. Now, she's going on several podcasts and once again talking shit. She had her second book where all she did was trash the WWE. All she did was talk about how they're sexist. All she did was throw Vince McMahon under the bus. She threw Bruce Pritchard under the bus. She threw the fans under the bus. She threw the women that she worked with under the bus. She goes on podcasts like The Laps Fan a couple of months ago, and she completely talks shit about how they didn't push her enough, how they didn't emphasize her real athletic ability. Like, come on, that's all you ever do is talk shit. You know what I'm saying? You don't get your way, and then you throw the organization and the people in the organization under the bus. Now, she goes on another podcast, and she's saying now that she has more star power than any of the women that are currently on the roster. And you're a liar. You don't. Rhea Ripley has more star power than you. Liv Morgan has more star power than you. Becky Lynch has more star power than you. Jade Cargill even has more star power than you. All of these women love the company. They devote themselves to the company. So now she is now debuted for AEW. And she's working together with Tony Khan. And apparently she's supposed to have a match with Tony Storm whenever. Because I heard through the grapevine, a rumor mill, I don't know how true it is, that Tony Storm is pregnant. So just I don't know how they're gonna work that out. I don't know how true it is because I don't really keep up with AEW that much. You know, you know, but that's what I heard. And then we know she's having in May. Ronda's coming back with Netflix, having the match with Gina Carano. Two washed up women that they're gonna draw a big buy rate because of Gina Carano and Ronda Rousey. They have that credibility from before. But I think her hooking up with TKO, her hooking up with AEW is a fuck you to TKO, a fuck you to UFC, and a fuck you to WWE because she trashed both organizations. Both organizations made her who she was, right? Obviously, in wrestling, they put her with people that can make her look good. That's the nature of wrestling. And then in UFC, it's not fake, it's real, but you can still, it's like in boxing. You can still put the people with jabronis and with tomato cans and people that they can beat up to make them look good. But Ronda's the type of individual that when she doesn't get her way, she trashes the fans, she trashes the people, she trashes the organization, she trashes the people that she worked with, she trashes the people that got her to the dance. No gratitude, a complete ingrate, like David saying, a complete fucking idiot. You know what I'm saying? Was a total waste for WWE. The type of right. David's absolutely right. Both organizations were a waste to her. Both organizations, but particularly WWE, because WWE, even at the time that she came in, they had a lot of star power even then. They didn't really need her, right? She didn't really do anything. She didn't really benefit. Her first run from 2018 to 2019 was a complete disaster. She was trash on the mic. She was a boring character. When she delivered a promo, her promos were so monotone that I felt like I was falling asleep. WWE should have at least hooked her up with Paul Heyman like they did Brock, right? But they didn't. They wanted to make her a babyface, and people did everything they could to try to put this woman over, and now she turns on the fans. So now she thinks she's getting a good deal in AEW. I know Marina. She's on drugs. She might be because she had no charisma, no charisma whatsoever. And I know what she's gonna say. What every other MMA fighter says, if a wrestler says that they're better than an MMA fighter, the MMA fighter will say, "Step into the ring with me and see what happens." Look, we deal in different arenas. You know what I'm saying? That's like a singer saying to a rapper, "Oh, I could outdraw you in a concert," and then the rapper saying, "Well, beat me in a rap battle, but I'm not a rapper." Like we're talking about two different things. We're talking about drawing power, right? And I never competed in your arena. Like these girls, the WWE girls never competed in MMA, but she competed in their world, and she didn't draw the kind of money that she thought she was going to draw in their world. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody looks back at WrestleMania 35 and go, "Oh, WrestleMania 35, that was one of the biggest drawing WrestleManias of all time where Ronda Rousey main evented," or WrestleMania 38. You know what I'm saying? Like, no. you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not just me being a hater because I liked Ronda. You see what my profile picture is Ronda. So at that time I did like her. But what I didn't start to like about her was, again, when she threw the wrestling business and she threw the fans under the bus, and she threw the people in the wrestling business under the bus. Then I turned on her because why? It's complete ingratitude. And MMA fans, the MMA diehards, they were saying that about her when she left the UFC. They were saying that she is that type of individual, that she is very hard to work with, that she's very conceited, that she's used to getting the world handed to her on a silver platter, kind of like Sasha. I feel the same way about her like I felt about Sasha, who I loved at one time. Other than that interaction that I had at the Barclays Center with her, then I turned against her too. You know what I'm saying? But she's another one. Like they go to AEW. People can't resist the need to go to AEW and completely trash the WWE, completely talk shit about the WWE. Like you don't see that in the WWE. Like when people come from from AEW to WWE, they don't talk shit about you. Like you never hear Cody Rhodes on camera talking shit about Tony Khan. You know what I'm saying? You never hear CM Punk on camera talking shit about Tony Khan. You never hear Rusev on camera talking shit about Tony Khan. Anybody that has left or AEW, anybody that has left AEW to come to WWE, you don't hear them talking shit about WWE. But you can't say the same thing about the other way around. Every time somebody comes from WWE to AEW, automatically everything's bad about WWE, right? Even when Cody Rhodes did it. When Cody Rhodes left WWE to start AEW, what was he doing? He trashing Triple H, just throwing and everything, talking shit about WWE. WWE doesn't even need to acknowledge AEW's existence because why? WWE is up here and AEW is down here. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about talent. I'm just talking about the mere fact that you're on AEW means that you have less star power than somebody in WWE. Why? Because the average person doesn't know what AEW is. I could walk down the street right now and say, "Hey, how many people here like AEW?" And then they'll look at me puzzled because they don't know what AEW is, right? When people think of wrestling, they think of the WWE. That's the best. WWE is synonymous with wrestling. If you go to somebody, hey, like I remember being in school recently, saying to somebody, hey, I'm a big fan of wrestling, and they go, oh yeah, WWE. They didn't go, oh yeah, WWE and AEW. No, because he wasn't a wrestling fan. He didn't know what AEW was, right? But everybody knows what WWE is. WWE is the leader in wrestling, right? That's just the way it is. You know what I'm saying? So anybody that is saying, whether it's MJF, whether it's Ronda, whether it's whoever it is, right? Nobody can sit there and say that they're in AEW and they have more star power than anybody in WWE. The lowliest jobber in WWE, fucking the newest person in WWE. When James Ellsworth was in WWE, he had more star power than anybody in any other organization at that time. TNA, wherever. Right? Because the only time in wrestling history ever that another organization that wasn't the WWE was more well-known than the WWE was in 1996, 1997, early part of 1998. Before that, no. And after that, no, definitely not. And it was WCW. That's why WCW is legendary, because they were the only wrestling organization to ever compete with the WWE. Nobody has ever done it before, and nobody ever done it since. So the mere fact that and especially now, because what ends up happening, and any wrestler will tell you this, when they go from, like, when Kurt Angle, right, when he left WWE in 2006 and he went to TNA, right, people would come up to him in the airport and ask him, hey, Kurt Angle, are you still wrestling? You know what I mean? Like, why? Because he's wrestling in TNA, but people don't know what TNA is or didn't know what TNA is or was. Same thing with AEW. Same thing with any other organization. MLW. fucking New Japan Pro Wrestling, wherever you want to name, Ring of Honor. All these other organizations, these are little organizations compared to WWE and the reputation that WWE has. You know what I'm saying? Because they've cornered the market so much that when you think of wrestling, when you think of professional wrestling, you don't think of any of these other places, only WWE, right? So let's see where her star power brings her. Can she? And plus, here's another reason why I know she won't have the kind of star power that in AEW that she had in the WWE. Besides the promotion behind it, they're on traditional pay-per-view, right? You know, they still rely on traditional pay-per-view. I don't know if they put all their shows on HBO Max yet or whatever, right? But they still rely on traditional pay-per-view. Nobody's spending $30, $40 or whatever it is for an AEW pay-per-view for All In, right? They're going, or whatever the pay-per-view is that they're going for in London in 2026. You know what I mean? You know, nobody is going to spend that. Not to see no Ronda Rousey, right? Not to see MJF, not to see John Moxley or any of these other washed-up WWE stars and anybody that they could get. MJF is really the only guy that's like an original AEW guy that they have, because everybody else is from WWE that's crossed over. Swerve Strickland, right? He's from a look. They lost. Powerhouse Hobbs went to WWE. The shittiest pay-per-view that WWE could put out is not going to even compare. It's going to be 10 times better than the best WWE. I mean, the shittiest WWE pay-per-view is going to be 10 times better than the best AEW pay-per-view ever. You know what I'm saying? It's going to sell more money because why? Again, people know the WWE. They don't know AEW. I mean, you have to be a wrestling fan. You have to be not a really hardcore wrestling fan, but a wrestling fan, a pretty hardcore wrestling fan to know what AEW is. You know what I'm saying? To even know what AEW is. You know? Anyway, guys, that's all. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, David. Thank you, Benjamin. Peace.